Hey, this is Hunter with Lone Star Woodworking, and today I build a table you can actually do as a beginner. I have a pretty cool new method of form release that I have to give some credit to, and I have a pretty cool new tool to show you. Alright, so before we get into the meat of the video, I do have to, happily, let everybody know that my content and my videos are all actually going to slow down. Now, why is it that a content creator and a YouTuber is excited to let their audience know that they're going to be slowing down? Well, it's because in the middle of next month, I am actually going to be a brand new dad. So I have a whole lot of new responsibilities that I have to kind of accommodate. And then on top of that, I actually just started a brand new job. So I have to start figuring out all my new roles and responsibilities as an employee. And somewhere in between all of that, I have to fit YouTubing and woodworking. So if you're a fan of the channel and you like what I do, I just ask that you be patient while I figure all this out, and eventually things will get back to normal. All right, on to the video. The wood I'm using here is called Texas Ebony, and I never heard of Texas Ebony despite living in Texas my entire life. And the only reason I heard about it was because of some guy who was selling a couple of slabs of it on Facebook Marketplace. The slabs were about 2.5 inches thick, about 48 inches tall, a little under 36 inches wide. And I had no clue if 450 was a fair ask for this type of wood. So I did a little bit of research, and I found out that this tree actually grows in the very southern tip of Texas, but its actual native region is the eastern area of Mexico. So why it's called Texas Ebony and not Mexican Ebony, I don't know. I think there is actually a Mexican Ebony out there, and maybe that's why just the name was already taken. But I reached out to the guy, his name was Matt, and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this, but do you have anything that's cheaper? Anything that's not, quite so big, maybe a rotted piece or something that I can use? And he said, yeah, I actually have a piece that's about a little over an inch thick, not quite as long, not quite as wide. I can sell it for $250. So I said, sure, why not? And the delivery of this slab actually got delayed by like a week or two, so he kind of cut me a deal. I only spent $100 on this, so in the end, I actually got a pretty solid deal on this. And now I get to make a pretty slick side table out of it. The form, or the build for the form, went exactly as you would expect it to, the way it always goes. I had this pretty big gap, but all I did was dam it up with some caulk, and it actually worked out really, really well. No leaks at all. And I actually had a commenter on my last video, the Hackberry desk, where I assume he probably watched the redwood table build where I struggled with that form as well, and then the Hackberry desk. And his comment said, oh my God, people stop using form release. That crap doesn't work. And my initial reaction to that was, okay, this guy's just mad that he has, an idea. Nobody's listening to him. And I was initially kind of cautious about reaching out to him or commenting back because I thought that it was just going to turn into a comment section argument, and I just really didn't want to be a part of that. But he actually ended up being a pretty cool guy. He just said, no, I've just always used tape or paste wax, and I've never had any issues. And I kind of was like, whoa, hold on, wait a second. We all know about tape. Tape is something that we all know works, but paste wax. And I asked him, I was like, the kind of stuff that you can get from Home Depot for like $8 a can. And he's like, yeah, I don't see why not. And I said, okay, sure, I'll give it a try. Why not? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And watch how easily this pops off. This was just absolutely amazing. And even the bottom went a lot smoother than my last two videos. So, hey, Aaron, you were right. I'm really happy we had that conversation. And now this is going to be my method of form release going forward. Now, speaking of commenters, I've had 2 comments. Out of the 100 or so that I've gotten, that's obviously not a whole lot, but I just kind of want to address this. They said that I really need to find my own groove and that it's kind of messed up that I'm copying exactly what other YouTubers are doing, and they were referencing Blacktail Studio specifically. Now, I don't think they were trying to be rude. I don't think they were trying to be malicious in this or try to put me down. But they said hey, man, you need to find your own groove because you're just not going to grow if you're copying exactly what someone else is doing. And out of just not really wanting to get into a comment section argument, I just agreed. And I said, hey, yeah, man, I agree with you. I'll find my own groove eventually. But, I had to think about that a little bit. my groove, or what kind of sets me apart, is that I'm kind of on a budget. Cam often talks about where he was. Well, my videos are where he talks about where he was. And he now has, probably a house's worth of tools, whereas I have, maybe a couple thousand invested in my tools. So I'm at where he talks about being when he first started. And I'm just showing you that this kind of art is 100% possible. So my answer to those comments is I'm not going to stop. I'm not hurting Cam's feelings. I'm not hurting anybody else's feelings that has this particular method of videography. And if there's really that big of an issue with it, well, then go give his channel more views. Go give their channel more views. Give them more subscriptions. I have no problem promoting them at the expense of my own channel. All right, so now that that rant is out and moving on to this new tool that I have, in my past videos, you've seen me use this 6-hole rigid sander, and this thing is actually great. It's really good for a beginner. It leaves a good enough pattern. After figuring out what the different sandpapers had to offer, I eventually switched to this mesh sandpaper, and it gave me an even better pattern. And after watching a video from 731 Woodworks where he reviewed this sander, I wanted to try it. And this is made by 3M. As you can see right there on the handle, it's got the 5mm rotation or a 3/16 orbital pattern, which means that it has a pretty aggressive pattern. And you can see there from the pad that it has the ability to accept all kinds of different sandpapers. So it was really cool having that versatility, including my 40 grit 6-hole sandpaper. And then I broke down a little bit further and I bought this 3M extract sandpaper. And the reason I say I broke down is because I've been avoiding it. I thought it was a huge waste of money. I thought it was being inflated to a point where, it was popular just by word of mouth. It didn't actually have a whole lot of merit to it. And I am kicking myself. That was a horrible thought process to have because this sandpaper is amazing. Those dark purple lines that you saw are actually raised, which means that it allows for more airflow, keeping the sandpaper cooler, making it last longer. And the way that this sander is designed, it is designed to keep itself cool. So you now have the tool and the paper working to keep everything nice and cool, making everything last longer and making the patterns a whole lot nicer. But no amount of sanding can actually, fix a bad pour, and you can see that there's all kinds of cracks and gaps. There's a lot of that rot. So what I ended up doing is just electing to coat the entire thing in a layer of epoxy. And that was mostly to stabilize the rotted areas, but also to fill in those areas that I would have had to fill in with some tabletop epoxy anyway. But you can't just fill in the rotted areas or the cracks. You have to do the whole thing because otherwise everything else will be noticeably darker once you've put the finish on. And then you heard me say before that this sander actually has the ability to have that 6-hole sandpaper. So I put the 40 grit on there and it ripped through it no problem. And that actually allowed me to get to the sanding process of the bottom and the top a whole lot faster. And every grit that I progressed to was just a better and better pattern. I was very impressed with this. So I put this roundover on there and the bit was a little bit weird. The bearing that rides along the edge was actually smaller in diameter than the lowest point of the blade. So it left this lip, which was super annoying to kind of deal with, but it actually forced me to sand off quite a bit of imperfections, which made it turn out a lot nicer. So as always, I am using Rubio Monocoat, and I'm not going to go into why this particular finish is more superior. I feel like I've done that enough. I feel like other channels have done that enough. What I'm going to simply tell you is that it does have another application that you can use, which is just your hand. You've seen people kind of just trowel it on the entirety of a table, and that works just as well, but you can buff this in with your hand on a project this small. And after that, it's business as normal. Wait the 15 minutes, wipe off all the excess, and for me, I was going to power carve the base because I thought that would be pretty cool. I had some really good walnut that I was using. But the base actually ended up being too small, so I had to settle for this steel base that I got off of Amazon. I think it was like $50. It came with 2, and it worked out pretty nice. And you can see that I actually had to leave some ugly saw marks on the bottom there, but that's because the screws would have gone all the way through if I didn't. And this is the final product. I'm pretty happy with this. The wood turned out amazing. The epoxy turned out okay. There were a couple of things I could have done to make it a little bit better. But overall, I'm very, very happy with the way this turned out, and I'm very tempted to keep it, but it is for sale. So, If you've enjoyed this video, if you've enjoyed my channel so far, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe, and I would love to have you along for the journey. So until next time, everybody, see ya.